So the gimmick with her, she has the same hull as the Richthofen. Like literally the same hull, same armor, all that shit. Yeah. So that isn't changed. The only difference, at least that I was able to find between the two of them, 33.6, yeah. The only difference was the AA. For some reason, the Richthofen, the AA goes out to 4 clicks with 497. Immelmann goes out to 3 clicks with 319. Why? I don't know. Does it mean anything? No, not very much. This thing has an aerial detection of 14.2 kilometers. And the AA goes out to 5.2, so there's a pretty safe bet that if planes are coming in, they're just going to rip through and shoot you. They're not going to linger. So it's not about your AA actually killing stuff. It's about the defensive fighters killing stuff. That's going to cock block the first few attacks against you. And obviously you can also drop some fighters on top of yourself as well. Whatever, I'm not going to look at it, but I probably should. But I'm not going to do it right now. So the big thing is her aircraft. She has torpedo planes, which got buffed a little. Okay, interesting. I guess this got adjusted because I think they only did 4,700 damage. Well, before maybe the NDA dropped. So I guess they got tuned up just a tad. So now they're 5333. That's interesting to know. And then the skip bombs are basically midway bombs. I mean, if we look at them, we go over here and just trying to check them out. They've got 68 millimeter pen, 71% fire chance. Big thing is, you drop 4 at a time, and we're going to see what that looks like. And I'm going to show it to you in a training battle. There are no training rooms available at this time. What? How bullshit is this? So, get some boosters, whatever. You can get some gearings. So I'm going to show you what our capabilities are before we worry about dicking around with this in the in like a random battle. And you know, USA. So we're going to go ahead and USA it up. So none of these should be armed. So this is not going against AA per se. I hate you. You make shit look so easy. It's not. It's just a lot of practice, man. You know, like, I don't play tennis like anybody that's in the fucking US Open, but it's still just hitting the ball. You get really, really good at hitting a ball. You hit a ball where you want to hit it. You get really good at running around to catch the ball. You usually catch the ball and hit it back. Like, obviously there's outliers. I mean, I'm not saying that like, oh yeah, shit, man, just hit the ball and you'll become a tennis pro, but... Alright, so, I'll show the torps first. We've all seen torpedoes. If we look at this, we drop 4 torps at a time. The fuck? Maximum damage, 4767. I think something was mentioned about the tooltip being incorrect. So I'm not sure which one this is, if it's 4767 or it's the 5333. Port says 5333, but I think it's actually the lower number. So if we go ahead and come in on this, if we're full speed in, we see the reticle park spot there. We'd start the attack run theoretically at 4.5 if we wanted to burn in full speed to line up right before we make the drop. That's a pretty big expanse as far as size for the drop. It's similar to what the Kaga is, and your planes are pretty damn fast. But your throw weight is going to be about 20k, and against a Wooster, that already drops it down to about, well, 15. There's a flood, and it's not repairing it, but whatever. So you've seen torps. They've got heels. They act like torps. If you've ever seen the Kaga, it's kind of that, only the torps are much slower. They're Graf Zeppelin torps, but they're under damaged. So if we use the numbers that I think these are, with this basically 4767, hitting 4 of these torps is equivalent to hitting 3 Lexington torps. So the torps are not the main gimmick of the ship. The reason why you have skip bombers and you have torps, there are no rocket planes. Why? Wargaming has been moving away from the rocket planes and rocket plane interactions with destroyers, because destroyers tend to come out pretty worse for wear in the rocket plane interactions. So, you know, you got this. She's also going to drop 4 skip bombs at a time, and we'll note what these lines are. This line is the first bounce, second bounce, third bounce. We're going to actually watch how this kind of drops, and I'm not going to speed up or slow down. The sides will firm in, and then we drop, but some of these bombs will be forward, some of them will be back. So there's kind of a dispersion, and that's about as tight as it's going to get. So it's not that there's left-right dispersion per se, it's forward-back dispersion, and then the aiming time actually shrinks like the distance left or right that the bombs might drop. So this will be a little chaotic, this will be a little less chaotic, this will be, hopefully, the least chaotic, as it's pretty much in a line. So you're rewarded for using the long range. The drop pattern is affected by how fast you are moving, and that can actually be a really interesting interaction. So this line out here, you drop it roughly 3.5. I'm trying to do this from memory because I checked it out and I don't recall exactly, but I think if you do not speed up or anything, that this max range is about 3.5 when you would click. So we'll just double check this now, and we can actually see maybe what the other lines will be if there's long enough. We would drop around 3.5. I think this is about 2 kilometers and about 1. Now the speeding up, you can make these things haul ass. You can see 242 knots. These things are not slow, which is one of the reasons why they probably, you know, did some of that flak rework stuff in 10.1, because these motherfuckers move. Which means we can bomb, or fling these bombs out, at 4.5 kilometers, which means we actually have to start our attack run about 7 kilometers away. Now notice, we're about 2.5, just veering off to bail. You can actually do better than that. If you haul ass in, you're going full speed. We're gonna go at this Montana. We're gonna kind of look in at it about 8 kilometers. We're gonna start our attack run. We're gonna come in and drop at max range, and as soon as we drop, we're gonna slam on the brakes, hard turn out, and get the fuck out of the AA. Or we could actually go on the Wooster maybe, but this is about 8 clicks, so we're gonna go on the Montana. We turn in, bleed about 1 kilometer for it. Full speed, hard burn, overshoot, slam on the brakes, hard turn, and try to get out. We got as close as 3 kilometers. We're already outside of the mid-range. We're back into long range, and we're out of AA, which means we come back out to about 8 clicks. Turn, set up attack run, and again, it's about 7-8 kilometers away with how incredibly effing fast these are that you're going to be setting in to burn in. Burning in 6, AA just opened up, and drop, hard slam on the brakes, hard turn. We get to about 3.2, 2.8, and we're already going back out. We're outside of the mid-range. We're back into light damage. These planes don't have a lot of health. So this long-range siege kind of stuff is a tactic that will be useful if you've got ships that are open water. But you see, you need about 7, 8, 9 kilometers of straight line to really be able to pull that off, to just burn in there and get the long-range drop. And note, if you see these lines, the reason we can chuck it at 4.5 clicks is because we are at max speed. If we were not at max speed, for instance, if we were going all the way slow, maybe we wanted to hit a destroyer, or maybe we wanted to hit a Wooster or something. Let's try to find a DD. We know they're around here, so I'll slam on the brakes. We see one. We see about 2.7. Probably going to be one here. Well, we can't take the last line, so we'll take maybe this one. Got 2 hits, 7K. Not a joke. Not a joke at all. If you can get a line on a destroyer, if somebody else is seeing the destroyer, then you can absolutely chuck in. Yeah, I'm allowed to show Immelmann gameplay, but I'm showing this first. I'm explaining what the bombs do, how they work, because that's going to be important for knowing how the hell to play it. So I'm going to drop a fighter just to keep this stuff lit, because I can't really see this stuff coming in. So note, the first line has a lot of vertical up-down dispersion. Midline has less. The far line has the least. There's still some, but it has the least amount. So we could put this reticle directly on the ship, but we could also put the reticle a little behind the ship because the bomb is going to skip to the line, which means it might slam into the ship on the way down. So we can go for, we'll say, Apostolus, which we might not even effing see because the fighter trolled us. Wah, wah. And you can see we put the line there and it did actually fall short. So that last line is actually pretty accurate. So we'll try and go for Hipper because Hipper's actually staying lit for another 8 seconds worth of time. Come on, buddy. The accuracy does not depend on the speed, but the length of the drop does. We'll try this. Got another 7K hit there. I would like to try to get something higher, because you can certainly get something higher. Alright, he should be over here. Slam on the brakes and start the run. Can probably make this work. Maybe. There you go, 9K, we got a 3 hit. Hitting on the tail or the nose of the DD might give you reduced damage as it saturates out. So you have the possibility of interacting with destroyers, and we'll go for a close range drop. But the destroyer does need to be broadside. We can try a close range drop and then a drop coming in from the front, just to show what the difference between a broadside and a nose aft in interaction is. So I don't remember where they are, but I know they're around here somewhere. Should be one here, right? Cool. We'll burn in, we'll drop off the initial set. There we go. Blapped. All 4 of them hit.
Destroyer foundered.
So could work out for you. There's going to be an element of RNG, but if you're caught broadside in, you might get nailed. Do not be broadside to a fairly accurate lined up set of midway bombs. There's another 2. That's about 7K. So that's some oof. All right. Well, what if you're turned in? What if you see the bombers coming? You prep for them. You put the bow in. Could try bombing the Wooster just because I can't see the F and DDs. But we'll try that. We'll try bombing the Wooster. We're coming in a bow-in situation. We'll use the most accurate reticle for what it's worth. And we'll see how it pans out. We got 2 looking pretty mid. Whiff. So broadside is a requirement to guarantee some kind of connection. Lastly, there's one other thing to talk about here. Is that the skip bombs, unlike the dive bombers, because these are midway bombs, right? These midway bombs have 68 millimeters of pen. All right, cool. Well, battleships have side armor. They have effective plating to try to protect their citadels. Some have more than others. This carrier, for instance, has quite a bit of side armor. Above the water, above the secondaries, you're gonna have some 25, you're gonna have some 21, you even have some 50 mil on the deck. But if you chuck this, where it's just kind of like gonna hopefully be dropping low, you get some shatters. We only got about 3,000 damage there. Unfortunately, we didn't see it. If I went over here and bombed the Montana, we could see that. But you can try if you want. We'll see. So we're at 61, 670. We'll try and bomb a little bit further back, thinking about the bomb jumping and coming back in, which maybe will be about here, to see if maybe we can jump over that armor. But we did much better. We got about 10,000 damage there. So you're gonna have to take that into account if you're looking at a battleship. You might strike the superstructure, you might also jump the deck. Realistically, these bombs will be best for cruisers that have exposed sidewalls that you're gonna be able to hit. And pen, and then obviously DDs if you can see them to strike them. But once again, you could absolutely use this baseline, but just know there's some forward backward dropping, and in order to get into this, you're going all the way into 1 kilometer range, which means you are in the closest of the close as far as the heaviest of the heavy AA. So there's a little bit of a risk reward or whatever. The deeper you go, the more AA you're eating to get to your target. But if you got to spot something like a DD, that's something you're going to have to do. And if it happens to be with other ships around, you're going to lose some planes. But plane losses are going to happen. What is your regen rate? If we look at the skip bombers, you have a 58-second regen rate. Holy effing shit, that's really low. Hit points are 2100. That's also pretty low. If you're able to do the long range drops, you know, where you're coming in 7 clicks, you're burning in, you get the line, you drop, you bail, you get right the fuck out, you're probably going to lose about 2 planes. So you're going to be able to harass, you'll be able to siege from a long range distance over and over while probably retaining enough planes to be able to do what you need to do. What would stop you from doing this is a ship using some island cover, something that's going to cock block that line, maybe having a ship like a Holland or some kind of destroyer that's got not shitty AA that's along that attack line that can surprise motherfucker your planes. Granted, if it's going to do so, it probably wants to be bow into the planes while doing it. Nonetheless, because they're not hard to kill, they only have 2100 damage, but they are numerous in what they do. And then the torps really are not that surprising. They're under health for what it is. They're just torps. I wouldn't say they're Kaga torps, but they're going to feel like Kaga torps. And actually, just for comparison's sake, Kaga torps have more health than the Immelmann torps. So, for what it's worth, if you ever thought, fuck, my Kaga torps are just getting ripped apart, yeah, then you know what it feels like. You have a heal. But yeah, and it has actually more damage on the Kaga than it does on the Immelmann. They're the secondary option for what you're going to use. One last thing, which I do want to show on the Immelmann, and then we can go to taking questions and stuff or go to gameplay, but I am going to show this because it's very important to know. Let's find what's 2 brothers or whatever. Yeah, 2 brothers. We'll do 2 brothers. I don't care. Just make the thing. Restoration time is way lower in the Immelmann. It is. That's correct. But I'm going to tell you, I've played this probably 3-4 times. Resources were an issue in cases like I hadn't mastered the forbidden art of the long-range siege bombing BS, and I still haven't mastered it yet. I intend to, but I still don't have that mastery. So I'm getting closer, I'm coming in, I'm taking attack runs, I'm taking losses, and I could absolutely tell you that you could definitely be deplaned within 6 to 8 minutes. If you're going hard or you're trying to get in on targets that are not spotted, you're trying to force the spot so that you can make the drop, etc. You could absolutely take some pretty significant plane loss, losing 3, 4, even 6 planes coming in on a single strike with this thing. So that's potentially 6 minutes of regen if you lose 6 planes. I mean, yes, 6 minutes or a plane a minute is nice, but it's still something to be wary of. Okay, so I mentioned you need that 8 to 7 or 7 to 8 kilometer guide in or something to be able to strike something, right? All right, let's try and look and see how island interactions work here. Yes, also no rockets. I mean, to be fair, it really does feel like Wargaming is going out of their way to try to make new carriers with less destroyer interactions. Granted, you obviously saw we could go after a DD here, but still. We're going to speed up, we're going to go, and as we lift into the water, if we drop, these are yellow. Because, blorp, they didn't skip. You actually have to be low enough to the water to get them to skip. So if you're thinking, ah-ha-ha, I'm going to pop over this island and I'm going to get this dude. Turns out, not necessarily. Because, blorp, it goes in the water, it doesn't get to bounce. You don't get some cool, like, attack and stuff there. So that is something you're going to have to be aware of. Island cover is effective at denying the skip mechanic. It's only going to give you the first line. Yeah, just like skipping a stone. All right, so if anybody has questions, I will take a little period of time to do some questions, and then I'll just basically cut this out and kick it up to YouTube, and then we can look at some gameplay. Again, I've only played it about 4 times, so it's not going to be master level gameplay. Mwah. But I mean, it'll be some gameplay. You get to see what it's like. Is the Immelmann worth the coal, or would you rather go for the Richthofen? Well, the Richtofen's free. It's a tier tree. Well, not free, but it's a tech tree CV. So, I mean, sure. Do I think it's worth the coal? 264,000 is a lot. And if we look at the armory, I don't have Like, I already have several of the coal ships. 240,000, 236 for the Marceau. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Salem, but she's a strong ship. The Marceau's pretty strong as well. Well, very strong. That's getting into steel. And then I guess I have all the other high tier stuff. I mean, relative to the fact that it's tier 10, the fact that it's kind of, you know, it's got its own vibe, it's got its own gimmick, yeah, I could see it for 260. If you don't necessarily think, man, I like it, but I don't like it that much, you could wait for a coupon. You know, chop off 25% of the coal and then buy it for like 180 or something. Okay. What is a good CV for a non-CV player to learn with? The US line. The US line is going to start with the Langley. If you look underneath the stream, there's actually a section called CV 101, which is a highly commentated CV game in the Langley. I'm going to warn you, the planes are murderously slow. The hull is murderously slow, but I picked the US line because it's going to be the easiest to interact with and understand. At least, you know, without trying to buy a premium or something. All right, so let's keep going with the Immelmann questions. MVR has better uses than the Immelmann, it appears. The MVR has excellent rockets, but unreliable bombs. And then torpedoes are very accurate, but they're not really the weight of your damage. The Richthofen requires citadels, whereas the Immelmann requires hits. Hits are much easier to get than citadels, although you do need to be hitting from a broadside strike. Is there a reason to actually choose this CV over one that can more effectively deal with all ship types? I wouldn't say that the Immelmann can't. I wouldn't say that the Immelmann can't deal with destroyers, because it obviously can. We watched it nail a destroyer. But if the destroyer angles, then yeah, the destroyer's not going to take a lot of damage. I would definitely say that it can interact with cruisers, because you can drop from long range. They're high explosive bombs, not AP. You can drop from long range, you can siege positions. If you got a Worcester behind an island, you can start chucking bombs, you know, at 4.5 clicks, hard turn out, in, out, you know, you can basically lay siege to a location. As long as there aren't other ships breaking your ability to cut in on a straight attack line. If there's something else that's blocking that line, then you may have to strike that thing instead. And battleship-wise, you might shatter some bombs on the armored sidewalls of the battleship, but you can light fires. You could potentially hit 4 bombs and light 4 fires. I mean, it's unlikely, but you could. Wouldn't that be cool? Wait, why is there a timer on your Immelmann? Because it's like a rental ship. Test ships and stuff they give you for community contributors. They seem to give it as like a test thing or a rental. And the rental runs out of time. And then when the next patch comes, they re-add new test ships as though they are rentals. If someone is bunkered up behind an island, can't you just drop on the first line if you know the orientation? Yes, you can. The first line is still viable for dropping, but you're going deeper into their AA, which means you're taking more damage for the drop, and the first line is more vertically, has more vertical dispersion. So it doesn't drop directly on the line, it drops a little forward, a little back, sometimes on, but because of that dispersion, if you come in on a cruiser, you might miss with 2 or 3 bombs, even though you've got the line buried on the cruiser. So there's a little bit of up and down with it. Can I show the armor scheme? It is literally the same as the Richthofen. The only difference here between the 2 hulls is the aircraft and the AA. You have less close range AA. Instead of having it out to 4 kilometers at a higher number, you have it out to 3 kilometers at a lower number. Pretty sure that's the only difference. And maybe less flak, but I don't know. That's the only thing that's different. Can these bombs bounce over a ship? Yes. So the skip bombs actually hit a line, jump up, and they can actually travel over a ship with the jump. So you do actually have to try to attack with those lines in respect to those lines. Yeah, I'm going to play a game with it, but I'm going to answer questions at the moment. So if people have questions about it, now is the time to ask, and then we can do some live gameplay. So the CV feels balanced in a game in a way that it feels meh? I don't know if I agree with that. People that have gotten to like the Immelmann seem to really like the Immelmann a lot. That being said, I mean, she's got tools. She's got the tools that she has. Whereas the Midway has maybe 3 different types of tools for 3 different situations. The Immelmann has 2 different types of tools that kind of cover a variety of situations. So, you know, is what it is. Seems weak compared to the Midway? Maybe, but as with all tools, I mean, you just have to learn how to use it. Would I mind showing upgrades and captain skills recommended for this ship? Sure. So, what I have for this ship, just picking the plain one, just picking the plain one. Now, I could use damage control party if I wanted to brawl with secondaries. It's not something that you would expect to do, but I mean, it's there if you want to. In which case, you would increase the time, the action time of damage control by a significant amount, 40%. So it's not quite 90 seconds, it's a little less. I think it's 84. So if you got into a brawl and somebody lit you on fire, for the next 84 seconds, your damage con is running. So it would allow you to secondary brawl. For slot 3, you can take additional speed on the torps, which is going to increase their lockout timing, because it's like the timing is set. The faster the torps are, it's just the further it goes before it arms. So that's fine, but the torps are a secondary armament, so it's not required. It's up to you to aim it, not the speed. I ended up taking secondary battery mod just because it is a German ship. It has the same secondaries, at least as far as I know, as the Richthofen. So the fact that they can go all the way out when fully spec'd to 10.4 kilometers, I think is kind of cool. And even though we have more anti-destroyer capability because we have HE bombs, it's still nice to know that they're there in case a destroyer slips through and wants to come after us. I have additional health on the skip bombs because the torpedoes are the secondary weaker armament, so I'm not going to go into that, and I don't care about the damage con. Flight control module, definitely with this. You will lose more planes than you think, so having more planes is actually worth it. That being said, could you get away with a concealment if you wanted to? You could. Just, you know, watch your resources. Could you get away with a squadron consumable mod? Yes, you could. Just watch your resources. You do have 4 fighters on each of your 2 types of planes. So if you ended up speccing this, you get up to... Well, sorry, that is spec'd, so I guess we'll check that in a second. I guess you only have 9 fighters? Or sorry, 6, really. 6 fighters across the two wings. So you're actually down a little bit in air coverage. So as far as the consumable mod goes, it would only increase the heal in the torps and give you a modest time increase in terms of fighters because you literally have less. So that's going to be another weakness, I suppose, for the Immelmann. Then it comes down to speed or health. They don't have a lot of health, so health is not going to be as big a buff as it could be, but in general, this is going to be for influence, this is going to be for resource protection, and we've already seen the skip bombs. When you go faster, the faster you go, the further the bombs project. So, taking additional speed means you project further, therefore speed is probably the only real option for the Immelmann. For the commander build that I have taken, more faster, healthier, base 9-point build for every CV. I have gone into the secondaries just because of the gimmick. Do I have to? No, you might not use the secondaries, in which case you have these 4 points to move. I do have bomber flight control for more speed. Why? The faster the bomb planes are, the further the skips go. So it's actually like you're trying to align the speed with the game mechanic to get the most out of it possible. So this is going to be very important. We could move these 4 points into Demolition Expert because we're chucking 4 bombs. That's theoretically plus 20% fire chance if all 4 hit. That's certainly something we could do. I don't really think Sight Stab is needed because we have less fighters than another CV. I don't know if going like a crowd control or fighter build would really be the way to go. Although maybe that's something some people will look at to how they could fit in. I don't think you need the flak talent. Unfortunately, Hidden Menace is still bugged. I do not care about the torpedoes in any way that I'm interested in speccing for, including proximity fuse, because proxy fuse, it's going to let more of the damage through. But again, hitting 4 of these torps is like hitting 3 Lexington torps. And while that's nice at tier 8, I don't know if it's strong enough at tier 10 for me to really care about. But ultimately, you're going to put the points where you want to put them. And to round out the build, I do have some extra fighters because fighters are useful. Patrol fighters spot as well as potentially protect allies. And then you also have some boost talents. Last Gasp and additional boost are useful for this build because you could absolutely strike, lose some planes and strike again, proccing Last Gasp. And if not, more boost is always good. So we'll go back to question stuff. Have I tried sight stabilization? No. You do not need it. There's no reason for it. You do not need it. All the aiming is very reliable. How many aircraft in reserve? So most carriers, we're going to look at, for ease, we can look at the Furious. Most carriers have 1.5 squadrons. So they're going to run out with 6 planes, and then they have half of a squadron remaining on the deck. So 1.5 squadrons, 6 times 1.5 is 9. However, on the Immelmann, because we only have the 2 squadrons, you have 2 full squadrons on the deck. So you have 24 planes is what you've got. We have 26 planes on deck because we have the flight deck mod, which gives us 2 additional planes and bonus regen. So you have 2 full squadrons of torpedoes and 2 full squadrons of skip bombers on the deck for use when you are capped, and you can increase the cap to 26 planes. Will this CV be good in ranked? Is it good for sniping other CVs? It absolutely could be great for sniping other CVs, because if you come in on a long range run and you drop that CV and you're able to turn out at 3.5, I think it was 3.5 kilometers, 3.2, that's far enough out that you should not trigger the defensive planes which would protect that CV. So if the CV is not going to be able to get its defensive planes on you, then it's either going to have to maneuver to avoid the bombs, or it's going to have to pre-plant fighters to stop you from being able to bomb it. So yes, it could absolutely be an effective CV sniper. Is it going to be good for ranked? I mean, that's really up to... people ask me what CV should they play in ranked all the time. The answer is whatever you're best at. Some CVs are going to fit the meta better than other CVs, but if you're able to play a CV at an A tier, and then you play the meta CV at a C tier, your better play is going to trump being specifically better in the meta at the moment. Unless you're really going into high-end play, in which case maybe you just have to pick the stuff that has the best options to it, but that's a judgment call you have to make. Are the planes fast enough to consistently get broadside shots, or will maneuvering cruisers and battleships be able to evade it? They could absolutely evade it. It just comes down to if they would want to evade it, because they might be facing gunfire. Obviously, you don't want to turn broadside to a battleship because you're scared of getting hit for 9,000 damage from some bombs. 9,000 damage, potentially an entire kill. 9,000 damage in a fire, dead. So, you got to weigh your options here. But yes, you could simply turn and mitigate a fair amount of what's coming in on you. Also remember that bomb line, if you've got your ship and you place the bomb line on it, if that ship turns and the bomb line's here, bombs that hit will skip over the ship. So this no longer becomes a valid target when it gets far enough away from that line that those bombs will either sink or hop over the ship. How hard can you turn during an aiming phase? Are there curling opportunities? No, not like the FDR. Not that I've seen. Typically you want to stick a line and stay on it. But I mean, it's not like it's a miserable aiming like... It's not miserable to aim like the torpedoes on the midway. It's responsive in that sense, but it's not something that you can hard turn. Not from what I've seen. Okay. So if we have any other questions about the Immelmann, we can go ahead and kick those out. Otherwise, I'll give it a go. And if you've asked a question, I've missed it, please go ahead and ask it again, because chat's kind of hopping, so yeah. Are citadels with bombs possible? Yes, if you have something that has a really weak citadel. So the skip bombers have 68mm armor. If you try chucking at a Yubari, maybe a tier 4 ship, citadel armor of 57 at tier 4, you'd be able to get a citadel on this. But in regards to a tier 10 ship, I don't know of any tier 10s that have a 68mm or less armor scheme. So I think that's unlikely. UK actually has a significant amount of armor. The Smolensk, maybe. No, the Austin would not be able to be citadeled by it. So Minotaur has 101, so no, there's no citadel opportunities with the HE bombs. And I could look at the Smolensk, just because Smolensk is kind of like a floating DD, sort of, with a Citadel. I think Russian is back this way, yeah? Moskva, no. Smol has 70, so no, you could not Citadel even a Smolensk with the with basically midway bombs. So really, realistically, no, you would not expect to get Citadels with those bombs. And it's again worth remembering that if the bomb hits here, it shatters, which means it does not do any damage. It might light a fire, but it's not going to do any damage. If you strike into a battleship, let's see. So if you strike in maybe on the FTG, you happen to see that in ranked or something, you would shatter here. You would not shatter here, not shatter there. You would shatter here, anywhere on the side. You would shatter on this part of the deck, on that part of the deck, shatter on the guns. So there's actually quite a bit of places where you might not do damage, but again, you could light a fire. What are the ideal targets for this ship? The targets don't have to be stationary because the bombs actually move pretty zippy. They're pretty they move faster than you might think. So you don't have to lead as much as you might assume you have to lead. So but mostly I would say some kind of broadside target that's not actively maneuvering heavily, because you do really need to get that line on the broadside target to be able to get the hits. But it's also worth remembering that if the line is here, the bomb is coming in at an angle, which means if you put the line behind it, it may still fall into the ship on its way down. The bomb should be around the speed of the planes if it's realistically. If I understand correctly, the bomb speed was like mathed out to be really damn fast. So the bombs are not going to be a realistic speed if realism is your gig. They've been tuned so that they are, I guess, usable. And from all I understand, it's unrealistically fast, but that's just the game mechanic. Are the bombs on upward or downward trajectory at the aiming line? Let's try and answer that this way. So you have your planes coming in. You know, they're coming in preferably with a line thick enough to see. They're coming in this direction, and we'll put a water line here. Cool. So you're going to have, supposed to be water, damn it. You're going to have your little lines coming in. And I'm going to draw these sideways just for sanity's sake here. So you'll have, you know, your first line. You'll have your second line. And you'll have your third line. And obviously these are not to spec, but whatever. We're just trying to make this visually understandable. So you come over, you drop, they come down. One of them hits here, one of them hits here, whatever, because they're doing that. It's going to skip off the water. It's going to come up. It's going to fall down. Skip. Skip. So this down angle could be useful because the ships may very well only be this high on the water. So it could absolutely be something that ends up being missed. And you can actually skip over ships. So if there's a ship here in the middle, it'll be skipped over. Ship here in the middle, it could be skipped over. You know, you could see something like this, but there's going to be a downward, upward, downward, upward. It really just depends on where the impact point is. And you need to remember that for the first line, second line, third line, whatever, I would expect the skip bombs will be, oh, come on, don't be like that. Don't be all turning and stuff. Come on. Come on. We'll do this. Whatever. Line's not to spec. Can we just like not... Can we just work with me here? Thank you. Whatever. I don't care. This is not done to scale. But the thing you have to remember is when you're dropping the bombs, you might have this style dispersion. This style dispersion. And then... you know, something like this. So it's going to get tighter the further out you go, whereas it's going to have more vertical dispersion. more, you know, forward, backward, quote unquote, vertical. In this case, it looks horizontal, but whatever. It's going to be able to drop, skip deeper, yada yada. It seems counterintuitive that dispersion gets better the further it skips. Well, it may be counterintuitive, but for gameplay purpose, the further the bombs go, the longer it takes for them to get there, the more response you have to be able to turn your ship or analyze the fact that it's coming in on you. Basically, the more response time it gives for the target player. So the more response time they have, the more likely they can take evasive action or do something to respond to the fact that they're going to be bombed. So what that means is the further out it is, the more reward the CV player has for using the furthest line, which gives the most response time to the target. Whereas using the closest line gives the least amount of response time to the target. Unless if you think of it in terms of, well, I saw the planes coming and they've gotten all the way over here. You did see that. But in terms of actually seeing the drop pattern of the bombs, where it's going, you would have less time if you were on that first line. So think of it more in terms of like a game player interaction. With the Immelmann, is the AA much worse compared to the MBR? It is, but does that matter? So realistically, if we look at the Richthofen, what is the scariest thing about the Richthofen? The 50 mil deck. Why? Because people can breach through this in all kinds of different stuff. Battleships, even some cruisers have enough pen to be able to breach through this. This is a weak point. So if you're going to travel with the MVR close enough to be able to give some kind of AA to your teammates or something, you are a target because people can see you. Your concealment is terrible. 13.6 base for surface detection, 14.2 aerial detection. It sucks. So realistically, this is not an escort ship. This is not going to be in the pack in the front line trying to give some kind of anti-air duty. And sure enough, the Immelmann, which has the same 50 mil deck, has less AA. So instead of like 500 damage per second at 4 kilometers, it has 319 damage per second at 3, which is obviously less. But you're not going to be running this as an AA support ship. You don't really want to be spotted because even cruisers could breach through your deck. So you could take long range fire from a Hindenburg that actually rips through your deck and into you. So you're going to be playing back anyway. Okay, well then does the AA matter if a CV tries to snipe you? You have enough AA that you should expect 1 to 1.5 plane kills, whereas the Richthofen might expect 1.5 to 2 plane kills, but you still have a defensive fighter. So when the planes come in, the defensive fighter latches and shoots at the remaining planes. So this should still keep you safe from a follow-up strike outside of the enemy player using some kind of heal. In that case, maybe you might get struck twice, but you could also recall and just put a fighter over your hull, in which case if they wanted to attack you, they get latched by this and the fighter that you drop. So the AA is less, but I wouldn't consider that to be much of a game breaker. What about secondaries? It has the same secondaries as the Richthofen, and if you buff slot 3, if you take this as well, and you've got the secondary flag, your secondaries go all the way out to 10.4 kilometers. If the FDR wants to kill you, it doesn't matter what you do. 3 bombs and you're gone. Doesn't really matter what the CV tries to grief. Well, so with the FDR has to come to you. So we'll go to this. If you've got your hull back here, whatever. If you've got your hull back here and the FDR comes over with, say, torpedo planes, then you have a defensive fighter that's going to knock out 4 planes. The enemy's coming out with a wave of 14. So all you have to do is before the planes come in, is you recall, go back to your hull, and you go ahead and drop a protective fighter over your hull, which will kill an additional 7 planes. So if the FDR does come in, it's going to drop with 2 planes. They're going to leave. It might lose 1 plane to AA, but maybe not. But then it's going to latch 11 fighter planes to come in and shoot down or shoot into the remaining 12. So if you kill even 1 plane with AA from coming across or coming back in, there's no second volley. FDR does not have a heal. This would kill 11 planes. It doesn't get a multiple strike. If you have fighters, if you have enhanced reactions, you can place the fighters closer to your ship. Enhanced reactions is getting buffed in a commander rework thing coming out soon, but if you see that the MVR is coming out, what you can do is simply come out to meet it and to pre-position fighters, because the fighters will latch as he's coming through and start to fire as he's dropping. So it may not prevent the drop, but if you kill 11 planes, they're not going to have enough planes to go in at you multiple times. For the next clan battle season, do you think each team should bring at least one AA spec ship? Well, there will be CVs allowed in the clan battles, so I mean, it would be responsible to prepare yourself in case you see a CV. So that's up to you and your ship choice. I mean, that would make sense. How far do the secondaries reach? They go as far as 10.4 kilometers. So this CV will be in the backlines. I mean, you can choose island cover, or you could have destroyers smoke you closer to the front. You can also, if you decided, instead of having 2 additional planes, so you had 24 of each instead of 26, and you go with concealment mod. Oh, we will demount. There we go. If you take concealment and you swap this over, which again, God forbid, like, please note that this is a bugged talent here. I'm just gonna do this for whatever, because we can respec him. You can get the concealment all the way down to 10.4. So you can actually reduce quite a bit of detection here, and you can have your surface detection be the exact same as your secondary rate, or your secondary firing range. That is a possibility for you, but still, 10.9 aerial spotting is a lot. And again, the hull is pennable. It's got armor. It's got more armor than you might think, but it can still be penned. Especially that deck, which I take as an issue. So, you know, if you want to swing your secondaries into the battle, that's cool, but you probably want to save it till the end. In my opinion, is the ship in a good place balance-wise? I believe so. I've only played it about 4 or 5 times. I have been told that people that have gotten very good at the ship have done very good in the ship. And there were some concerns that it's actually too strong, but I think that was before there was like an alteration to the torpedo output, and I believe the bombs got altered as well, but I didn't play it in that iteration. In general, I think if you learn how to do well with the ship, you could expect to do well. But when you first start out, you're probably going to be underwhelmed, because you'd be like, oh, I'm not hitting for the 20,000 damage I would expect throwing all these midway bombs. I'm hitting for like 10s and 7s and 12s, and I'm maybe lighting a fire or something. But it's really up to you as to how you keep your pace and how you continue to interact with stuff. Do I consider concealment worth a try on Enterprise? You could if you wanted, I guess. But I don't think it would need it. Also, Enterprise needs rockets and torps. The bombers are unreliable at best, so I think flight deck mod is better because it gives you more rockets and torps. And since that's what you live on with the Enterprise, having more of those is better. All right, so if there's any other questions about the Immelmann, I can try to answer those. And if there are not, then we can derp around and do some gameplay and see what happens. Let's see. Signals. Usually try to buy up to about 100. We have a lot. It's fine. Yeah, sure. So, last check. 264,000 near end. 264,000 coal, I think, is the number. Remember to change slot 5 back? We can do that. I could play it with concealment, though. Just because this spotting is atrociously bad. I'm actually going to leave concealment on for the lulls. So we'll play with that. So we'll see how these natively regen. So the skip bombers, instead of regenning one every 58 seconds, it's one every 61. And then instead of, I think it's 61 or 62 seconds, it's now 65 for the torpedo planes. Once again, we start with 2 full squadrons. So, you know, we'll see what happens.